Matthew's 14th chapter come these words. A rather familiar story, I think. Beginning with verse 13. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Bring those here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down in the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So ends the reading. That's all. Let us to pray again. Illuminating God, we listen to a story that perhaps we've heard many, many times before. It's also an extraordinary story of miracle. And sometimes for both reasons, having heard it a lot, and the fact that it's a miracle, we might be inclined to sort of set it aside. But we know that nothing's lost in your scripture. We ask that the blessing of this miracle would take hold, make fruit in our lives, the fruit of compassion, kindness, and love. May we be blessed, and may the world around us be blessed for having heard it. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. Certain stories in the Bible make me hungry. And this is one of them. So I guess it's no surprise that while I was putting down my thoughts for this sermon, I also put down half of a box of graham crackers and about a liter of ginger ale. And I think it's kind of unconscious, basically, but there was, I guess, some vague sense of being a little peckish as I read and reread these words about these poor folks, so late in the day, so far from McDonald's. The disciples, perhaps out of deep compassion for their teacher, suggest that he dismiss the crowd and let them fend for themselves. It sounds reasonable, only one Jesus, many of them. And he was tired, Jesus was. He put in a full day of curing and caring, not to mention that he was grieving. Oh yeah, there is that little detail that can be easily missed in the story, given where we start reading it, and it's not explicit. But right at the outset we read, Jesus withdrew to a deserted place when he heard this. Well, the this that he heard was that his friend and ally and cousin, John the Baptist, was dead. Beheaded. Very dead. So perhaps miracle number 1 of this story was that Jesus was even able to entertain one guest, let alone 5,000. But he did, all day. And he wasn't serving Oreos either. He was offering deep compassion and healing. I don't know how Jesus found the strength to do it. He had to be tapping into something a whole lot deeper than I often tap into. I don't know about you, but at a time of acute loss, I do well to get out of bed, make coffee, and face the day, or maybe just the morning. But it seems that the point of this story is that we have more than we think. More strength, more faith, more creativity, more potential, more love. And it's easy to sell ourselves short. The glass so often looks half empty. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough youth. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough energy. We don't have enough pumpkin pies. But I hear Jesus telling us that we do. Disciples didn't believe it either. What? Feed this crew with a couple of Filet-O-Fish sandwiches? Must be a McDonald's kick. Yeah. Jesus, have you gone off your rocker? But the boys had at least the good sense to swallow their disbelief long enough to let the miracle unfold. Got me to thinking about 5,000 people. That's a lot of folks. But I did some number crunching. iPhones are great for a lot of things, including the calculator. I was reflecting on the 16 years here at the United Church of Bristol, thinking about all those delicious fall and spring dinners when folks would flock into our social hall and fill their hollow legs with turkey and ham. I broke out the calculator and I figured that in the 16 years I've been with you, we have fed well over 5,000, probably more like 6,000 or 7,000. And that doesn't include soup suppers. And we filled a few baskets afterward, smaller baskets, usually available the next morning. For a small donation, please. Perhaps our dinners aren't miracles in the same sense of feeding the 5,000. But there is, I think, something miraculous still at work. Just think of the number of times we wondered where we're going to get enough servers, or potatoes, or pies, or dishwashers, and they come. I guess my point, again, is that it's easy to underestimate the abundance of God. So we look ahead to a time of change in this church. As I retire and new pastoral leadership is sought, it can be easy to doubt or fear. Questions like who, what, how, when may come to our minds. Probably about the same questions that immediately came to the minds of the disciples when Jesus said, feed the people. Of course, Jesus did something very important before the miracle ever occurred. He took the food and he blessed it. It's a funny thing, but I actually had to look up the word bless, even though I use it every single day. As in, come near Jesus, our guest, to be, and bless these gifts bestowed by thee. So, exactly what does it mean? What do I mean by bless these gifts? Do I mean make up for a distinct lack of seasoning in my turkey sandwich? Or amplify this rather modest bowl of oatmeal? Help me ignore the stale crackers with the cheese? No. I think when I ask God to bless this food, I'm asking God to put it to holy use. Which sounds lovely. But beware. Because once you ask God to put something to holy use, there's no telling what will happen. Once I turn something over to God, it's not entirely mine anymore. Once in a while, I take my beloved T5 guitar in for servicing at Mobile Music. And that involves placing my baby in the tender care of Tim Chappell. It's not surrendering my guitar that's tough, nor is it even paying the fee. The hardest part of going back to get my guitar a few days later is listening to Tim pick it up, rip off some guitar riff that makes me want to go climb into a hole for about a year and then maybe try harmonica. No telling what will happen when we place something precious into the hands of another. may be very good, but it's not all about us anymore. I don't have a clue who baked the 5 loaves or who caught the 2 fish. Somebody may have slaved over a sweltering Middle Eastern oven for part of a day to make that bread. Or if somebody like me caught the fish, they could have been out there all day long to get them. You get possessive of your fish when you average 1 fish every 2.5 hours, like I do. Did these folks particularly want their fish and bread to be blessed and given to strangers? Hey, that's my rock bass. It's my pumpernickel. Turn for that. There's a lot of letting go in this story. Not just letting go of skepticism, but letting go of stubborn senses of scarcity. Letting go of our agendas, too. Maybe somebody had big plans for that bread and the fish. Maybe it was earmarked for the brother-in-law's birthday party or the Moose Head or the Moose Lodge Friday night fish fry. With Moose Head too, maybe. Times of loss are hard and they involve a lot of change. Jesus was facing a big change too, looking at a new life square in the face, a life without John, the one who baptized him. John was a hard guy to replace. You just don't find a lot of big, hairy, locust-eating preachers. At least not in the UCC. It's also true, though, that as we try to embrace the change with all the ambivalence that comes with it, a whole lot of people can get fed, too. People really needing to be fed. Maybe we're some of those people. What we don't hear about in this account is the effect on the disciples of being part of this mass feeding. How did that miracle reverberate throughout the rest of their lives? How did their understanding of Jesus expand? What did they begin to see possible that they'd written off before? When we risk being stretched by God, great things can really happen. And I'm going to use a commonplace example that we did not use with the kids, but they can relate to this. It's a little bit like learning to ride a 2-wheel bike. Instantly, your world expands. It's not all about your driveway anymore. Soon you set your sights on the house next door, your friend down the street, and eventually the ice cream stand. Now we're talking miracle. All because of that one miracle that widened your world. My prayer is simply that we join the party with Christ, the one that he's throwing, eat heartily, and trust in an awful lot of really good stuff yet to come.